I think, Alex, we should approach an uncomfortable subject with Jim that you may be aware of as a person who works day shift, and that is the food that we leave on our desks when we're on day shift. Mm-hmm. Is there a particular location we should be leaving that so that if it's food we want to keep? Because when I was started at OFFSHIFT, I was first told that it's not called stealing, it's called foraging.
Welcome to You, Me, and IBMI.
So this is pretty exciting today. So far, the people that we've had on the podcast are people who work normal shift hours during the day. And we have some people in the center that do off-shift work, and they cover for us when we're at home, having dinner, on the weekends. And so the person we invited today, Alex, is Jim Shupe. Now, have you had much experience before? Do you know Jim?
Oh, yeah. I know Jim because, I actually work until 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So any cases that I don't fix by the time I leave for the day, there's a good chance that Jim will be getting some experience with that case.
Oh, so Jim is in your same area?
No, but, before we get paged out, for example, Jim will have a look at the case. Is that right?
Usually that's true. Yeah, one of the people on the off-shift team, whether we have someone who's got skills in that area or not, will look at a case before we page it out, try to get some basic information, try to determine, is this something the customer really needs to solve right at this minute, or could they wait till tomorrow morning? And if they can, great. If not, well, then we page somebody out.
What would you say are your technical specialties then?
So I've been working, the current team, as you guys would know, it would be eBiz Web Services. That used to be CTA. And I am the last member of that team that was an original member of that team.
Oh, wow.
CTA, I remember, was a really hard team because for a while there, when WebSphere was first coming in there, I think that team worked 24/7 for months.
We did get a lot more pages when WebSphere and Java were new to the IBMI. Way back in the day, we supported some different languages like C and C++, which now Languages team supports. We supported at one time, we supported the DNS server because EWS supported it.
Okay.
EWS joined with us. Now that's back to COM.
Yeah, and now it's one of the larger group. They have a pretty high case volume compared to other teams in the center, I think.
I think Save Restore and Database have more calls than we get.
Oh, okay.
And that's it, at least based on my knowledge.
Yeah,
eBiz is big.
And to me, it seems like that team, eBiz should be staying quite busy because you guys support Digital Certificates Manager and also single sign-on Kerberos.
Yep.
And, as time goes by, administrators are having to make their systems more and more secure.
Right. I'd say that keeps our call volume relatively high. Those two particularly, SMTP or email is another one that keeps our volume pretty high. The problem is most of that team has been around for a while. Like I said, I'm one of the original members, but a lot of the team has been doing the job for a long time. So we solve problems faster.
I was actually thinking about that the other day because if you bring your car into the shop and say, hey, I need a headlight replaced, that's a job that's going to be billed at a half an hour and the technician is going to be paid for a half an hour. But if a call comes in here that we can handle really quickly, then we only get time for 2 minutes. And then it's done. And then we have to find other ways to fill our time, to educate ourselves, to review other cases that are coming in and provide, like you said, updates. Sometimes if you're looking at a case, a customer asks what might be an easy question. If you have time, it's always a good time to say, hey, let's review some other things because there could be other issues or things you've heard about. You're like, hey, you're upgrading to you're upgraded 7.5 now. Let's make sure that your, SNMP configuration is correct so that you're not getting those errors we've heard about. So sometimes we can fill that extra time with kind of handy tips for people.
Absolutely. That I do that myself. As if I'm working with, as you said, like a digital certificate, how do I import a certificate? But I sense that maybe this is a new person to digital certificates. Then maybe we'll talk about how digital certificates really work and
Yeah.
what you're really doing and why are you doing what I just told you to do.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, here, do this, follow the steps I gave you, versus this is why you need to follow the steps I gave you.
Yeah, and that really helps self-support later because then they'll remember it better, they'll better be able to help themselves, and they'll come to us with hopefully questions that are more interesting, a little more challenging. You know,
Yeah.
like somebody comes in, I have a wild card certificate. How come that's not working? And you're like, oh,
Right.
let's figure this out. By the way,
That's a
wild
real
cards.
interesting one because wild cards now do not. This is not an IBMI change. This
Okay.
is an industry change. You now have to have a SAN, subject alternative name, that matches the host name and domain name of the system you're on, or browsers are going to tell you that's not a valid certificate.
Okay, well, we just created a new video with Ted Dow, with his help, about wildcard certificates for Object Connect, which is a save restore command. So, Jim, how did you start at IBM?
So, kind of an interesting story. I started as an intern back in the late 80s, early 90s, and I was working in Chicago at One IBM Plaza.
Been there?
I worked there for a year or two. I can't remember exactly, as an intern. Then they moved what I was doing up to the University of Minnesota, where I was working with some people up there. We were creating an electronic resume system for students out of college. I was working for National College Recruiting.
Okay.
After that gig, I interviewed with, when I was getting close to graduation, I interviewed with 6 managers here in Rochester. And I ended up working on the Performance Explorer team.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, the PECs.
Oh, that's
Yeah, you
PEX.
take a
Oh, I
PEX
didn't know
trace,
that.
yeah.
Oh, PEX.
So this was before there was PECs.
Okay.
So
I've heard of a PEX trace, but never. Is
I
that kind
actually-
of old school now? I
Well,
don't want to
no,
dig deep
the-
into PEX, I guess, but I mean.
Performance still uses it, and
Oh, okay.
I think the High Doctor is what evolved from PECs.
Okay.
But we were, not only were we taking data from the system and putting it in files, we actually developed a GUI interface to look at the data, to analyze it. So like you see, performance
IDOC.
reports, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I started at IBM. And then some things happened, and I ended up coming over to support. Started in database because my job on the PECs team was taking the data from the MI and moving it into data files for PECs to analyze, because PECs is above the MI. And then but the intention at that point was for Joe Druga to create CTA. So I started out in database while CTA didn't exist. Then I moved to languages. CTA didn't exist. I was working with Tosh.
Sure.
And then right around when we moved to the white buildings, they created CTA. It was Tosh, me, Jim Fair, and 2 other guys I can't remember now.
I think Rosso was on it for a while, but maybe that was later.
That's probably later. The original group was really small, and we were supporting stuff on OS2 Warp.
Awesome.
So I've been in that team, that CTA team, as my core team since then. About 15 years ago, they were redoing how OFFSHIFT worked, and I took the team leader position there, but was still the core team of the CTA eBiz team.
So, what does the team leader of the OFFSHIFT team do?
At the time when I was doing it, I was essentially the de facto OFFSHIFT manager, because there was no manager who worked OFFSHIFT.
Oh,
There was
what about duty managers?
They're not managers; they're duty managers.
Right. Okay.
So they manage cases and to help move them around and get the right people engaged, but they're not really a manager.
Right. They're not a people manager.
Right. And I wasn't either, but essentially I did everything except for reviews, and I did the day-to-day stuff during OFFSHIFT, in addition to my job of being a technical expert.
Yeah.
And then recently, when we brought on the India team, we moved the team leader job over to somebody else who was actually nearer to them in the world work, isn't asleep in the middle of their day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Are you a night person?
Well, no, not really, but I am now, I guess.
Okay.
When I started it, I wasn't. I came from working 410s during the U.S. shift, so I'd be here at 7 and leave at 6. And then I went to working, I think originally I started working at 4 or 5 and worked till 2 in the morning. Wherever 10 hours works in that.
Yeah.
And then that shift has changed over time, but now me staying up to midnight is pretty much a standard thing, although I recently shifted back a little earlier in the day. For the longest time, I worked New Zealand hours, so it'd be like 1:30 our time till midnight.
Do you have a wife and kids, or anyone else that might be bothered by a late shift?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
My wife and I work opposite shifts. She works during the day for a school district. I work evenings. I've been working evenings for a long time. All my kids are adults now. But the nice thing about working nights was I got to work from home before working from home was a thing. And so my kids probably saw me more on a regular basis and got to interact with me more than people who work regular U.S. shifts kids do.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So I remember my son a lot. I've got a couple pictures of him while I'd be talking to a customer. He'd be sitting on my lap when he was a couple years old.
Oh, cool.
So, he
That's sweet.
it's a different thing. It's a nice thing, to have been able to do that when they were growing up and be home more. I have my only kid now. Well, my only at-home kid is a dog who only weighs 6 pounds, and he sits on my lap half the time too. So
All right. Cool.
he keeps me calm.
Yeah.
I had a chicken like that during COVID. She joined team meetings. It was nice.
Nice.
Plus eggs these days, that'd be a good deal.
That'd be a good deal, absolutely.
And are any of your kids going? Are they in IT or
No,
No.
No,
You look
no.
like you're disappointed that they're not in IT.
He looks like he drove them out and make sure they were not going to be in IT.
no, I didn't do that either. My encouragement was always do what makes you happy. I don't care if you want
Alright.
to drive a honey wagon. If that makes you happy, do it.
Yeah.
I have one that's in, one that thought she was going to be an actress and decided right before going to college to switch her degree to finance.
Ah.
Totally dropped acting.
All right.
I have one who has been interested in genetics since she was in middle school and is just finishing up her master's to become a genetic counselor. And then my youngest, he wanted to go into like something to do with nature, wildlife.
Yeah.
And his first year of college was COVID.
That's
That
so
did
hard.
not work for him.
Yeah.
And so he did not complete his college degree. He said, no, I'm just going to go and do something else. It's not a disappointment. I mean, it is, but it's not. I wanted all my kids to have a college education because I think a college education is a good thing, whether you use it in your job or not. You get exposed to different things. You learn different ways of thinking. And unfortunately, it just didn't end up working out for him. He was really frustrated with school and just said, this isn't worth it.
COVID was so hard for so many people. Some people, it was like, oh, it's fine. I'm like totally an introvert and I wanted to be in my bedroom anyway. And other people are like, it really affected them really negatively.
For a job, it affected me zero. I was already working from home.
Right.
Yeah.
Unlike everybody, the only thing I had to do is I had to increase the bandwidth on my internet because now instead of me, I had 5 people at
We
home.
did the same thing. That's
right.
why we went to gigabyte internet is because COVID. Oh, man. One of the things I like to kind of explore more on our podcast, Alex, is how our listeners can pick up tips from our guests about how they can do things differently or what they might be able to do better to collect data so that when they open cases, they're better prepared and that we are more able to fix their problem as soon as possible. What are some interesting cases you've had lately that customers might be able to learn from?
So I'll give my tips first because
Sure.
that's easier than cases because I have a memory where I'll remember your case, but I need a prompt to remember what your case was. Same with when people say, turn your head, don't look at my password. I'm like, I won't remember it tomorrow anyhow, unless it's a really good password.
Yeah.
any rate, I'd have two tips. The first one is make sure when you're describing what your issue is in your initial case update, you are as thorough as you can be. If you have a log that you're saying, hey, I've got this error in my my job and I need help with it, that may not get you help as quickly as you need. If you say, I've got this error in my log and I'm attaching the log file, then we can look at that log file and say, oh, that's an RPG thing. We need a languages person. So instead of me calling you, whose RPG is rusty enough to be non-existent, we'll get you to someone who has some RPG skills. The other tip I would have is get QMG tools and keep it at least 3 months current.
Yeah.
So if it's older than 3 months from today, you need to update. Figure out, and we've got documents to help you update your QMG tools, keep it current. And if you're out there and you're saying, hey, what's QMG tools? I've never heard of this. Set of tools IBM support, us, guys in this room, gals in the support center, have put together to help us get the data we need to help solve customers' problems efficiently, quickly, and thoroughly. And if we can't solve them, get that information to development so that they can fix whatever it is. We don't normally ask for QMG tools frivolously. We want what's in there. We know what's in there. We know what we're going to look for when we get it.
Yeah.
And it's totally a set of IBM tools. It doesn't have an impact on functionality of anything on the system.
Really easy to update.
It is. It can be done automatically if you have an internet connection and you're fairly current. I learned today that if you're old enough, it won't update automatically.
True.
And then otherwise you can go out and download a save file and restore it. And we have those instructions and probably provide that link in the description for people.
Yeah, we can do that.
So besides that, I mean, trying to remember an interesting case. I mean, I have lots of cases that are quote unquote interesting, but I think the most interesting one lately was someone had a one sentence case that said, we need help, we have a problem, and that was it. And I'm talking, and I said, okay, who wants to flip a coin and say who's going to call this guy? Because it was a guess at who could help this person.
Right.
You know, if it was, like I said, if it was an internals case and I called him, well, it was going to be a waste of his 15 minutes and my 15 minutes, and then I got to find an internals person. And if I have to page that person out, then it could be a half hour more instead of knowing what the problem was in advance. And sometimes when you send us a problem, and if the more specific you are, we can even search and find an answer. And even if we don't have the skills, we might be able to help you instead of having to wait that half hour, 45 minutes, hour for a pager person to show up. You might get that answer quicker the more specific you are.
Yeah, I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit. I think the cases that come into OFFSHIFT, you're handling.
We don't page out a lot. We do page out. It's usually, was just having this discussion with Wayne, and if it's a Sev 1 and it's been going on for a while and some new data came in, a lot of times we won't even, depends on the area. If it's my area, I will take a crack at it. eBiz gets paged when I'm working once or twice a year where I get stuck. And I don't know. Sure. Maybe it's just I'm looking at the data wrong, and you guys know sometimes you just need someone else to go, well, what about this? And then you slap your forehead and go, well, now I feel like an idiot.
Yeah. I had a case this weekend. A customer called in, and he was migrating from a Power 8 to a Power 10, and he had done a save to an RDX drive, and then he was remote. So he had the user at the location in Iowa take the RDX drive, move it over, plug it into the new Power 10, and when they booted the thing, it said, no operating system found. So my immediate thought was, oh my gosh, somehow the save was bad. And he thought the same thing. So he took the RDX drive, he had him take it, unattach it from there, attach it back to the other Power 8. And in the end, we found out that the cartridge that was in the RDX drive had been ejected. So when the person moved it, there was a loose cartridge just sitting in the drive that would have never been read at all. But they don't do that, so they just didn't know enough to shove it in. So all you had to do was shove it in, move it to the system. It was fine. But yeah, we always need those extra extra set of eyes sometimes to go,
Yeah, it's kinda
did you
like-
think about this?
Did you turn the power button on?
Exactly.
No, I didn't think that. The power button should be on. And then you ask and they turn the power button on and, oh, look, it's booting up, right? What I've learned over, gosh, almost 30 years in support is sometimes, recently we moved to this new system and a lot of our calls are electronic and we'll back and forth with customers thinking we got an answer or we need data
You mean electronically?
electronically.
Digital support.
I think sometimes a Teams or a phone call will solve problems faster, and sometimes I would say that in my case anyhow, if I push back, it's because I don't see the value of doing that yet. You haven't sent me data. Otherwise, I'm more than happy to talk to you.
Sometimes people open a case and they'll say, let's get a Teams meeting and you can configure this for me. Well, we're not here to do,
Right.
we love to help you, but we're not here to be your system administrator.
Right. A lot of times that data that we ask for, having that data makes it easier for us to understand the environment. It's your system. It's not my system. I've never been on your system before. I don't know your environment. I don't know what you're running. I don't know what should be running. But if I get data, I can look at this and then say, oh, look, these ports aren't active. Why aren't these ports active? Go look. Oh, look, there's no Telnet jobs running. Why aren't Telnet running? Why is Telnet not running? Track it down and go down that rabbit hole until I look. Whereas looking at that same stuff over a Teams meeting that someone else has to drive their PC
Yeah.
be a ton slower than us going through the data where we know where it is in our collectors.
That's where the QMG tools
Absolutely.
really comes in.
Yeah, and sometimes if I'm in a situation where I've got a list of different things I would like to see from the customer, if I can get those items by just requesting a SysSnap, I'll do that first and add anything that doesn't happens to not be in the SysSnap separately.
And also the nice thing about QMG tools being our tool is that the developer of it, Andy Henderson, is more than happy to, if a team has information that they'd like to add to the tool, to add it in there and push out a new version of QMG tools with the data that we need people to collect. And so
Yeah, it's getting better and better all the time. It's
great.
I mean, it was already great, but it's getting even better.
Well, and the other plus about QMG tools is I may be looking at something from, let's say, a Navigator for I or at the admin jobs, right? But it comes in and we analyze that data. We just had a case the other day where the customer had on 9 defective PTFs without their superseding. And it analyzed that and sent a post to the customer without me doing anything.
yeah.
If I was just looking at an admin issue, I wouldn't have looked at those PTFs. But we caught them because of these tools.
Jim, do you have any favorite customers? Do you have any customers that you look back at and remember fondly?
So I'm not really good with names. I'm terrible with names, to be honest. That's why I think I married the woman I married, because she remembers everybody's name. But there, at one time, and this was years and years ago, we have an offering like premium or that level of support where you have someone who manages your cases.
Yeah, I think now it's called expert care.
Okay. At one time, I was not on premium, but I was managing every case for.
Really?
Wow.
They sent me a baseball hat.
Oh,
I mean, they had to get permission and all this stuff just
Sure.
to be sent a baseball cap. But they had a ton of cases, and I was talking to them every day on my cases. And they said, well, can you look at this case? And this was back in PMR day. At any rate, so I had 3 or 4 different C and C++ calls, but they had a dozen cases open. And so they'd start asking me, can you look what's going on with this one? And essentially I became their advocate. And it's kind of fun. I'm not sure I'd want to do advocate job as a normal job, but it
Yeah.
was fun for a little bit to do that and get recognized by the customer as, hey, we really appreciate him going out of his job to take care of us. And yeah, it was great. It was just a baseball hat, but I think I still have it in my stack of hats, that I've accumulated.
well, and we really care about people. It's nice to make those connections. Do you have any favorite customers, Alex?
I don't.
No, let me ask you again. Alex, do you have any favorite?
Not really. I mean, I guess I'm just focused on fixing the problem at hand.
Yeah.
There's a lot of customers that we enjoy interacting with, but you interact with them once or twice a year maybe, and so it's hard to say, well, that's my favorite customer, right?
That's true.
I had a lot of people that I thoroughly enjoy talking to. I couldn't tell you their name. I couldn't tell you what company they are. When I see them, I'll recognize, like, oh yeah, this is Carol. I love talking to Carol. She's always so nice to me.
Yeah. Oh,
know?
Jerry's calling back.
Yeah.
Hey, Jerry, how's it going? Yeah.
And we recognize you when you call in. If you call in even somewhat frequently, we know who you are. And how you interact with us gets around to the team.
I don't get to talk to you enough, Jim. I mean,
Not since you left my team.
I know.
And that's one of the disadvantages of working off shift.
It is.
There's no other people, right? It's kind of nice to come into the office and chat with folks.
Right, and when you work remote, it's you and Slack. And you can talk to people, but it's like, why would I bug Kurt if I don't have something to ask him?
Right.
He may be busy, but it's nice to come in. There was a period where I didn't come in for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I was coming in for a couple times every month. And then COVID hit. And it was back to no time.
Yeah.
And now I come in once a month just to interact with the team, interact with you guys, whoever's around.
So what are you working on right now as far as projects or anything like that?
So being off shift, I don't get involved in a lot of the projects in the support center. But I took over last year the Test PTF tool. When you go to a website to approve of Test PTF to send to a customer.
Yeah.
And I've got 3 or 4 ideas that people have sent saying, hey, we'd like to see nothing that needs fixing but needs improvement.
Yeah.
The problem is my actual Java coding skills are not. I can debug Java pretty good, but coding something in it is less confident.
Yeah.
So I'm taking a refresher course in that, but that's a project. I've got a couple things on my plate to improve for that. Hopefully make it so that when you put in the serial number, whether you put it in with a dash or not, it automatically takes it and manipulates it how it needs to manipulate it. Another one was, can we approve multiple systems at the same time for a test PTF? My first thought was, why? And then my second thought was, it doesn't matter. If we can do it, let's do it. And just make it available. So if a customer has 3 systems they want to test it on, okay, instead of having to do it 3 times, we'll do it once, or do it once and then bring up the system serial number again, say, do you want more, kind of thing. I haven't figured out which way to go with it. We'll see.
Yeah, that'd be worth having because it does seem like a lot of customers are using a dev test environment now, so they do want to put those PTS on multiple systems before they promote them to production.
Right, and so that'll make it easier for us. It's right. The way we do it now is not that hard. It's just it'd be easier if we could do it all in one go. Right. So that's the big thing I'm working on right now. As far as I'm refreshing my Java skills and going through the code that someone else wrote.
Yeah.
So if you've ever done that, it's always fun. Versus something you wrote yourself and I know where to fix that. It's just right here.
Right.
So,
Well, that PTF information will be great because we're going to be doing a podcast episode in a month or 2 about PTFs with the PTF, some of the developers that actually create the PTFs and do the testing and the building and things like that. And just kind of to let people know kind of what is a PTF, kind of how is it built, and what's in it and things like that. So, and test PTFs are a big part of that. So that's great information.
Jim, it was a pleasure chatting with you today, and thanks again for joining us on You,
Me, and IBMI.